The last time I checked, West Ham United was still a Premier League football team. Look, granted, we're hanging on by the skin of our teeth, but a Premier League team we still are, for now. So, what I'm finding rather frustrating at the moment, apart from the agony of our current league predicament, are the stories circulating around linking almost every West Ham United player leaving the club. This is almost as if the press have already decided that we're down. Well, we thought we were down at Christmas time, and look at us now. 38th game of the league season, and we're still there. Look, apparently, the likes of Castellanos, Fernandez, Bowen, various others have apparent relegation clauses in their contracts, allowing them to leave for a fraction of the price that we paid for them, or allowing them to leave for a fraction of their current values. So much rumor, but that's it really. It's all rumor, and a lot of the rumor has been refuted. Look, I've got absolutely no doubt that players have spoken to or are speaking to their agents about what happens next should we get relegated. But if these players were exerting as much energy on the football pitch as they seem to be doing about their futures, then perhaps we wouldn't be finding ourselves in the predicament that we're currently in. I'd much rather that these players focus their energy into winning a bloody game of football in order to give us a chance to stay in the Premier League next season. And that should be their priority right now, not where they might be playing their football next season. But what I guess is even more infuriating is that these agents, these player agents, can't keep their mouths shut. They're briefing journalists and ITKs about player futures left, right, and centre. They're already touting their players' availability, putting other clubs on red alert that these players that they represent are ready to jump ship should the inevitability of relegation happen on Sunday evening. So far, Jared Bowen is going to Chelsea, Liverpool, Newcastle, or even Everton. Or who knows, he might even stay, according to some other reports. Thomas Soucek, yet again en route to Everton, just as he was meant to be doing last summer. Crescencio Somerville, apparent interest from Roma, and we won't let him go for anything less than 40 million euros. Matthias Fernandez, that we've been hearing for the last 3 weeks or so, George Mendes' agent, is the George Mendes client, of course, apparently already initiated talks with Man United, if you believe that to be true. Both John Claire Todibo and Aaron Wan-Bissaka have apparently made it clear that championship football is not for them. And the latest is that Tati Castellanos will be on his toes sharpish if we go down, with several clubs abroad and Fulham interested in his availability. Well, if any of this is true, then perhaps these players ought to reflect for a moment, because just about every single one of these players I've mentioned is culpable for the fact that we're in the relegation mess that we find ourselves in. You may point the finger at Nuno, his odd team selections, his formation, his tactics, and you'd be right. You may also point the finger at the departed Brady, despite her having scarpered, and Sullivan for the absolutely abysmal way that they've run this football club, with their lack of vision, their lack of skill, their lack of ability. It's all caught up with them, hasn't it? You may also ask, what the hell has Daniel Kretinsky been doing in the background? He's been standing by, seeing it all fall apart around him without seeming to either care or wanting to do anything about it. But the reality is, we've been in this situation for as long as we all care to remember, since moving from Upton Park. Apparently, this was meant to be the dawn of a new era. And now we can only narrowly avoid relegation so many times before it actually catches up with us. And this might be the season that happens. But then you look at the players and ask yourselves, are they even good enough to be worthy of Premier League football? They're all talking about jumping ship, but how good are they as football players in their own right? Now, whilst many of our current squad think that they're better than championship football, I would say perhaps you're not that good, and maybe championship football is your level after all. But prove me wrong. Show me on Sunday against Leeds United that we are indeed worthy of your presence, that we are indeed worthy of having you at West Ham United, and that you are worthy of being a Premier League footballer by putting in a performance that will make me and every other West Ham fan feel proud. The reason why fans sang "You're not fit to wear the shirt" after the Newcastle game was because this bunch of players looked as if they didn't care. Now, I'm sure that's not the case. I'd like to think it's not the case. But when fans read stories about players being linked elsewhere, and then they see these players putting in little effort into their game whilst wearing the West Ham shirt, then you can understand why fans feel frustrated, why fan frustration was boiling over in the way that it did after the Newcastle game. Look, the likelihood of West Ham United surviving relegation is very, very slim. If and when relegation is confirmed, I do expect a number of players to be leaving. Some will leave because we have no choice but to get them off the payroll. There's a lot of players at West Ham who are on big money. Alphonse Areola, circa 120 grand a week. Max Kilman, 100 grand. Crescencio Somerville, 80, 90 grand a week. James Ward-Prowse, don't forget, he's on about 115 a week. Tati Castellanos must be on a good 90 grand a week. Nicholas Fulkrug, remember him? He's on about 100. Jean-Claire Todibo, about the same, maybe 80, 90. Aaron Wan-Bissaka, he came from Man United on a high wage, and I dare say he's still on it at West Ham. All these players are earning 90 grand a week, 100 grand a week, maybe even more. And, these players, if we go down, will certainly leave because we cannot afford their wages. Then there is a small handful of players who West Ham might want to keep, but may not be able to do so. Dinos, Thomas Soucek, Jared Bowen are those sorts of players that fit that particular category. But as I said, before any player is set to leave, the agents should shut their mouths, allow the players' heads to focus on the final game of the season, because that's what's really, really important right now. And once that's over, let's see where we're at. And then let's start talking about who really is going to stay and who really is going to leave the club. Look, our predicament is not good, but we've been given a new lease of life. Well, a new lease of life. We've been given another lifeline in order to try and stay up. And it's down to Tottenham Hotspur to get the point that they need. And if they don't, well, they're as bad, if not worse than we are. The table doesn't lie. But I just wish all these stories that are being bandied around would kind of stop. The damage is kind of done. I think I remember saying that Fernandes was on fire until a couple of weeks ago. And ironically, a couple of weeks ago, all the rumours started coming out that Man United were 100% interested in him and that it was going to get done. We know George Mendes, Fernandes' agent, has got close ties with Man United. And there's absolutely no doubt that Fernandes, whatever league we stay in, has got big things ahead of him. If we stay up, I reckon we'll keep him. If we stay up, I reckon Nuno will stay. And he'll probably persuade the likes of Fernandes to stay, as well as Somerville and other young players that we've got. Because what Nuno will want to do is build a stronger squad around those sorts of players. But it doesn't help, does it? It doesn't help that we hear rumour after rumour after rumour that these players have jumped ship. And I think worse than agents putting these rumours out about other clubs being interested in our players, it's the ones where you hear the stories of, I'm not hanging around if West Ham get relegated, as if it's got nothing to do with them being relegated in the first place. Aaron Wan-Bissaka, Todibo, and Castellanos are apparently the latest players to have said that they won't be hanging around. We all know this anyway. You don't have to tell us, and it's a bit of an insult to West Ham fans, especially after what happened against the Newcastle game. It's a bit of an insult for these stories to be coming out. It unnerves the players. It unnerves the fans. It doesn't do anyone any good. It's as if the journalists, it's as if the press already want us to be relegated, so these players can go off to pastures new, better clubs. What better clubs? I don't know. It's frustrating, but let's focus on what we need to do this coming Sunday. We've got one last chance, our last chance. There isn't another one, Nuno. As I said in the show that I did the other day, this is our final chance to stay in the Premier League, and we've got to take it with aplomb. Let's hope we do that, and let's hope the players turn up. Let's hope the players play for the shirt, because that's what counts right now. Let's worry about what happens to these players after the Sunday. But at this moment in time, it's all about what happens on Sunday.